up in the world today. Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is discharged from the Charité hospital in Germany following treatment for a Novichok nerve agent poisoning. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko is sworn in for a sixth term in office despite outcry from the opposition. Plus, the U.S. Supreme Court honors the late Ruth Ginsburg. Well, welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. After 32 days in the Charité hospital in Germany, Russia's opposition leader and Putin critic Alexei Navalny has been discharged. He was being treated for poisoning from a Novichok nerve agent. Navalny posted a picture of himself standing unaided with a message saying doctors had given him every chance of a full recovery. His team still insists he was poisoned on the orders of the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Navalny began recovering earlier this month, with the hospital saying he had been removed from a ventilator and could leave his bed. German authorities have said laboratories in France and Sweden had reconfirmed German tests showing that the poison used on Navalny was a Novichok agent. His supporters had initially believed that his tea had been spiked at Tomsk airport in Siberia before he caught a flight to Moscow. However, they later said the traces of the nerve agent had been found on a water bottle in the hotel room where he had been staying. Reacting to news of Navalny's release from hospital, the German government said it was relieved but would not give any information about his whereabouts when asked. A spokesperson also said he could not answer how long Navalny might stay in Germany, saying that was up to immigration authorities. The opposition politician was flown from Russia to Berlin last month after falling ill on a domestic flight in Siberia. As we said earlier, the West has demanded an explanation from the Kremlin, which has denied any involvement in the incident and said it has yet to see any evidence of a crime. A German government spokesperson, Stefan Seibert, says Germany and its EU partners would continue to push Moscow for an explanation. The 44-year-old Navalny had said he planned to have physiotherapy and might follow treatment at a rehabilitation center to regain his motor skills, including the full use of his left hand. VOA's Charles Mains joins us now. He's in Moscow. Charles, great to see you. Has the Russian government reacted to Navalny leaving the hospital in Germany?
You know, today we heard from Dmitry Peskov. This is the Kremlin spokesman. He was asked by journalists to react to the news of Mr. Navalny's release from the hospital. He said that the Berlin patient, as he likes to refer to Mr. Navalny, they prefer not to say his name, was free to come back to Russia if that's what he wanted to do. He was asked if there would be any sort of special reception for him to guarantee Mr. Navalny's safety or find out anything else. He said that the Kremlin was not planning anything special for Mr. Navalny, but certainly investigators were willing to talk with him if he wanted to share news that he was sharing, according to Mr. Peskov, with German prosecutors, German investigators, and not with the Russian authorities. This goes back to the Russian line from the very beginning, which has been essentially that Mr. Navalny left Russia after this falling ill in good shape with no evidence of any poisoning, and then suddenly it was German authorities and subsequently French and Swedish who found indications that Mr. Navalny had been poisoned with this Novichok, so that Russia had nothing to do with this.
He has been said to have plans of returning to Russia. I mean, we discovered this. This was said, I think, about 2 weeks ago, that Navalny intends to go back to Russia, even though he and his team believe that the Russian president ordered his poisoning. Is that plan still in view?
Mr. Navalny made a statement today. He posted on Instagram, his preferred sort of means of communication on social media. It was a picture of him in a park, sitting on a bench, again, celebrating in a way his release from the hospital. At the same time, he made quite clear that he has a lot of progress to make in terms of his own health. He was saying his goals in the immediate future are to go to physical therapy, to be able to stand on one foot. apparently these are some of the challenges that he faces after this poisoning, and that's going to be his focus in the meantime. He did seem to exude some of the kind of typical, Navalny wit, in the sense that he joked that he asked doctors what else he could do, not, beyond sort of, prepping himself physically, but also mentally. And they told him to read books, post on social media, and play video games. And he said he liked that answer.
Indeed, enough time for recovery. But the European Union had once called on Russia to participate in the investigation into the use of a Novichok agent to poison Navalny. And they're not saying that Russia is behind it, but they want them to participate in the investigation. There's not been much said about this over time since, the appeal was made to Russia. Is there any word on whether they intend to carry on with this investigation, with or without Russia?
Well, you're right. Essentially, Europe is calling for an investigation. The Russian authorities say they have no intention. They haven't even seen, in their point of view, any evidence of a crime. They also say that the German authorities have not provided evidence of this Novichok poisoning. They say they look forward to getting that from the German authorities. But essentially, the Russian line seems to be that nothing happened here. And it's difficult to see how Europeans can carry out an investigation when the crime happened in the middle of Siberia. If this was something like what we saw with the Skripals in the UK, that was an attack carried out allegedly by Russia, according to the British authorities, against Russians who'd immigrated to the UK. So it was something where they had the evidence at hand. What apparently the German authorities have at this point is this bottle of water, which Navalny's associates smuggled out of the city of Tomsk, where he was allegedly poisoned. That seems to be a critical piece of evidence, but it doesn't provide all of what they need to know. So I think the question moving forward here is what actions the Europeans take. There's sanctions, although I think it's fair to say that Moscow has been sanctioned so much of late that in a way they're sanction-proof. I think the more critical punishment that could be meted out against Russia would be to cancel this Nord Stream 2 pipeline. This is a pipeline gas deal from Russia through Germany to Europe. The problem is it hurts both sides. And so I think it's a really delicate issue in terms of what they want to do going forward if they want to somehow punish the perpetrators of this poisoning against Alexei Navalny.
Yeah, and the Russian government saying Navalny is welcome should he decide to return to Russia. Charles, thank you again for joining us on The World Today, and do stay safe in Moscow. An important date is in neighboring Belarus, but to the government opposition, it's a controversial day, and that's because Alexander Lukashenko has been sworn in for a sixth term in the country. Despite all the outcry, state media said several hundred people attended the ceremony at the Palace of Independence in central Minsk.
It's Inauguration Day in Minsk, but for the rest of the capital, there is no semblance of the special day. And those who witnessed the swearing-in came from a strict list. Pictures of Lukashenko placing his right hand on a copy of the Constitution and swearing the oath of office is distributed to various media. That is before the presidential office releases a video of the event. The sudden ceremony would normally be publicized as a major state occasion, but was instead held without warning. The opposition accuses the president of massive vote rigging and has staged more than 6 weeks of mass protest demanding his resignation. The United States and European Union are drawing up sanctions against officials involved in the election and a subsequent crackdown by the security forces. In his address, President Lukashenko praised state troops for defending the sovereignty and independence of Belarus. In a video published on social media, an exiled opposition leader said Lukashenko was not a legitimate leader of Belarus and that she is the only leader elected by the people. She described the inauguration as an attempt to seize power. Fellow opposition politician Pavel Latushko asked on social media, "Where are the jubilant citizens? Where is the diplomatic corps?" Most of the country's main opposition figures are in self-imposed exile in neighboring countries amid a wave of arrests.
Checking in on COVID-19 cases across the world. In the UK, the Metropolitan Police is increasing its enforcement of coronavirus regulations in line with new rules reeled out by Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Officers are expected to help people understand and follow the regulations, but they will also be firm and take appropriate action against those that simply refuse to follow the law. Here's the global update.
Have your new regulations gone far enough, Prime Minister?
The British Prime Minister has announced a massive package to protect jobs and indicated he will be looking at creative ways to do more. He says the government is also going to come forward with more measures, though he ruled out a simple extension of the existing furlough scheme.
Very difficult circumstances, and that's why we've put in the support that we have. That's why there's don't forget there's the job retention bonus at the end of the year to help people, to help firms to keep people.
In Spain, hospitals are under pressure from the number of people being admitted. More than 10,600 people are presently in hospital with COVID-19, 1,348 of them in intensive care. Coronavirus patients occupied nearly 10% of all hospital capacity across the country, but in hard-hit regions like Madrid, that share is as high as 25.5% as doctors complain of a lack of staff and resources. Passengers returning from France have been added to the list of those travelers who need to be tested for the coronavirus at Rome's Fiumicino airport. The rapid 30-minute test will now be compulsory for those traveling from Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, Corsica, Hauts-de-France, Nouvelle-Aquitaine, Occitanie, Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, and Île-de-France, the region that includes Paris. Belgium has decided to reduce the quarantine period for people with coronavirus symptoms from 14 days to 7. It's one of a number of new measures for the country, announced by the Belgian Prime Minister Sophie Wilms. The new quarantine rule will apply from October. The German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas is in quarantine after a member of his security team tested positive for the coronavirus. An initial test on Mr. Haas was negative for the virus, but the Foreign Ministry said in a statement today that would remain in isolation as a precaution. Finally, New Zealand has announced face masks are no longer mandatory in most parts of the country as COVID-19 cases continue to drop. From midnight of Wednesday, masks ceased to be compulsory in Auckland, the heart of a recent outbreak, except on public transport and planes. The rest of New Zealand lifted all pandemic restrictions on Monday after recording no cases for a week.
Across town, as I've been visiting different sites, the usage has been high.
Meanwhile, head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control has praised African states for managing to curb the spread of the coronavirus. The continent has seen about 1.4 million cases of the virus and 34,000 deaths since March, figures considered much lower than what is seen in Europe, Asia, or the Americas. Dr. John Nkisagong attributes the low number to a joint continental effort which focused on scaling up testing and following up contact tracing, and very importantly, masking or the wearing of face masks. He also said the emphasis on community-driven initiatives and experience in contact tracing from fighting diseases like Ebola had helped countries to tackle the coronavirus. While there may be cases that have gone undetected, experts such as Dr. Nkisang says there is no indication of a large number of unexplained deaths in most countries. There's more coming up after the break on The World Today, including this. Britain's street artist unveils his first public sculpture in London. Stay with us. Welcome back. A coalition of South African organizations has staged a march to the Nigerian High Commission in Pretoria, the capital city, to protest against a string of crimes allegedly committed by Nigerians in the country, which includes kidnapping, human and drug trafficking. They delivered a memorandum of demands, which was received by the Nigerian High Commissioner. He says that while Nigeria does not condone acts of criminality, even by its citizens, the country will not accept any form of negative profiling because there are many Nigerians who are law-abiding and resident in South Africa. Our Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, reports.
The mobilization for this protest began on social media, and here we are at Church Square where people have gathered, and they say the destination for the protest is the Nigerian High Commission here in Pretoria. The message, they say they're putting South Africa first, and within that slogan are lots of messages that they have for the people concerned. We asked one of the leaders why single out Nigerians.
The Nigerians are on top of the list when it comes to human trafficking, drugs and child abduction. That's why we have chosen that one. We're not saying like the others, they are not, but Nigerians so far, they are on top of our list.
Nigeria doesn't complain about South Africans running amok in their country, but we do. So that's not a good relation. And it is a disgrace to good Nigerians because now you have all these bad ones who outnumber everyone else.
The protest soon made its way to the Nigerian High Commission in Pretoria, where the Nigerian High Commissioner, Ambassador Kabir Bala, opted to attend to the protesters himself. Despite some strong words used by some, he listened patiently as several leaders gave the message they're trying to pass across.
I want you, from tonight, you must sleep and think about this. The South African mothers, they sleep with tears in their eyes. Every night.
If everybody is saying Nigeria, Nigeria, not saying Ghana, that means there must be something that is happening there. The reason we are here today, we're saying there's fire, we can see the smoke. Why our sisters are being taken away from us? Why our young brothers are being fed drugs? Why?
When the ambassador responded, he also wouldn't accept any interruptions. He told the group he's quite disheartened that his mission and citizens are being singled out for a protest like this, when the law in the country is there to deal with any criminal despite the nationality.
We don't accept the profiling of Nigerians here. And I will never accept a situation where you will tell me all Nigerians are criminals in this country. That is unacceptable. But what we are saying to whoever in this country and anywhere around the world is that if a Nigerian commits a crime, there are institutions, there are infrastructure, we should use them to try them.
The group handed over a memorandum of their demands, which includes the deportation of Nigerians who are illegally residing in South Africa, as well as those who are allegedly involved in criminal activities. Another protest is billed to be taken to the Department of Home Affairs by another group on Monday, the 28th of September. From Pretoria, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
And to the United States, today began 3 days of tributes to Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg as pallbearers carried her flag-draped coffin into the white marble court building of the Supreme Court, and mourners lined up to pay their respects. Wearing dark suits and black face masks due to the coronavirus pandemic, dozens of the liberal icon's former clerks stood at attention as the coffin was carried up from the court's broad steps. Ginsburg's court victories helped move the nation closer to equal justice under law, said Chief Justice John Roberts at a private ceremony inside the court's Great Hall. And outside, hundreds of people waited to pay tribute in a public viewing due to start at 3 p.m. Ginsburg, who over the course of her long career championed gender equality and other liberal causes in recent years, became something of a pop icon for the American left. She died on Friday at the age of 87.
Said that Ruth wanted to be an opera virtuoso, but became a rock star instead. But she chose the law. Subjected to discrimination in law school and the job market because she was a woman, Ruth would grow to become the leading advocate fighting such discrimination in court. She was not an opera star, but she found her stage right behind me in our courtroom. There, she won famous victories that helped move our nation closer to equal justice under law, to the extent that women are now a majority in law schools, not simply a handful. Later, she became a star on the bench, where she sat for 27 years. Her 483 majority, concurring, and dissenting opinions will steer the court for decades. They are written with the unaffected grace of precision. I mentioned at the outset that Ruth's passing weighed most heavily on her family, and that is true. But the court was her family too. This building was her home too. Of course, she will live on in what she did to improve the law and the lives of all of us. And yet, still, Ruth is gone, and we grieve.
Now, on Friday, Ginsburg will become the first woman to lie in state in the U.S. Capitol when her casket is placed in National Statuary Hall. In the meantime, staying in the U.S., storm Berta has weakened to a tropical depression as it crawls inland along the Texas coast south of Houston, unleashing heavy rains, as we see there, flooding streets and forcing emergency workers to rescue dozens of people. Rain submerged roads in the nation's fourth most populous city, swamping cars, shutting school offices, courts, and energy shipping ports. Flooding was heaviest where tail lights blinked just above the water on streets and on highways. Fire Chief Samuel Pina says there had been more than 60 rescues and evacuations of people in floods caused by Berta. Most of the rescues had been from vehicles stalled out on inundated streets. Meanwhile, Mayor Sylvester Turner has warned people to stay home as it would help a lot. He also advised that they not try to drive through the high water. And as we end the program, British street artist Stick has unveiled his first ever sculpture in East London, which he says stands for hope and unity in the coronavirus times. Holden hands depicts two figures facing in opposite directions, yet holding hands as a sign of the universal love and solidarity, the artist explained. A cast in patinated bronze in Stroud, southwest England, a sculpture now in Hoxton Square is roughly twice human height, standing at 4 meters tall. The artist said the hands are low enough for a viewer to reach them, and the figure's legs from a doorway through which they can pass.
Well, I've known Stick a really long time because he was one of the first people to walk in off the street and bring me a book that he'd just made and say, "Can I stock it in your shop?" And I said yes. And actually, he just reminded me of that because I'd completely forgotten. It's a pretty special day today. I know his work and I've seen a lot of the pieces on the walls, and I think this one has got something really tender and warm about it. And I was just surprised because I wasn't expecting that. And I think right now that's what we need, is to really sort of celebrate that we've got to be pretty we've just got to kind of hold it together, really.
And looking forward to the times where we can hug and hold hands. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi.